So I am filming with a little bit of a headache today, so if I start squinting at you at any point in this video, that is why. Just don't question it. So this is my first book haul of 2023. It's actually not though, and for that reason I am going to be doing book hauls a little bit differently this year. So normally I just include absolutely everything I've received over the period since I last did like a core book haul, but now my unboxing videos are some of the most viewed videos on my channel, so it feels kind of redundant for me to then include monthly subscription box books in this video, especially as when we've done it in the past, like those aren't books that I chose for myself. They were curated by a subscription box, so I don't really know very much about them, and there's no reason that I can tell you of like why or how I acquired them. We are still going to be including any special editions from subscription box companies that I have purchased myself though, because obviously there's intent behind those purchases. And we are also still going to be having book of the month books in here, because when I unbox those and talk about them, it isn't in my regular unboxing videos. I'm also not going to be including any of the books that I received in my Books to Door video in this one, which is where I received £100 from Books to Door to spend on books on the store, and I did an unboxing for you guys there as well, so I will link that up here if you want to check that out. This is everything else that I've acquired since it's December. Actually, there are 4 or 5 books that came to me in December. The rest are throughout 2023, like up to date. So as usual, this is going to be split into places where I acquired these books from. Today we have books that were sent to me by the publisher, we have books that were gifted, books that I bought new, just one book that I bought secondhand, special editions from subscription box companies, and a small stack of book of the month books as well. So there are, I think, 35 books to talk about today, and I am going to be kicking off with those books that were sent to me by the publisher, because I do have 2 e-arcs, and as we know, if I don't talk about them at the beginning, I forget that they exist. So the first arc that I have is of Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is Ali Hazelwood's upcoming release. I think it's out in June. I have just read this one and really enjoyed it, but it is once again a standalone that focuses on women in STEM. This one in particular is following Elsie, who is a people pleaser that is trying to get, is it like a tenureship or like a tenured position at MIT, but to make ends meet, because she's currently, I think it's called an adjunct professor. This is difficult because I don't work in STEM and I'm also not in the US, so if some of this terminology is wrong, then I apologize. But she doesn't make very much money doing this, so she also moonlights as a fake girlfriend, and she very quickly finds out that her favorite client's older brother is on the admittance board for MIT and will be judging her for this job position. I have, like I said, just read this one. It was my first read of April, so I will put the vlog that I read it in up here if you guys want to check that out. The second e-arc I received I have also read and didn't love this one as much, but this one was The Faithless by C.L. Clarke, which is the sequel to The Unbroken. I read this because I was the guest host for the NB Book Club for the month of March, and I have the Illumicrate edition of The Unbroken, but I only gave it 3 stars, so I didn't want to get an Illumicrate edition of the sequel and it wouldn't have arrived in time anyway, and it's only available in paperback in the UK alternatively, so I then didn't want to buy a paperback that wouldn't match my copy of The Unbroken if I did end up liking it, so I requested it on NetGalley and I was actually accepted. But The Unbroken is about a soldier called Terrain that was taken when she was a child and raised by a country called Balladeer in the army. It was like an experiment. She was taken from a desert city, and essentially Balladeer are colonizing all of these desert cities and countries, and this experiment was that they took kids from these countries and raised them as a military unit. So Terrain has now been stationed in the city that she was taken from, and she actually believes in the Balladeeran ethos. However, she is still treated very unfairly, and due to a set of circumstances, she ends up being a go-between between the Balladeeran Princess Luca and the rebels. And then Luca's story is that she is trying to take the crown from her uncle, who is supposed to be sitting as regent, and to prove herself she wants to quash this rebellion. Yeah, sadly didn't like this one very much, but I did have an e-arc of it. I received an e-arc and I read it. So in terms of physical arcs, I actually have quite a few. This is unusual for me. The first one I received was actually unsolicited, and I'm going to be unhauling it because I've also received other copies of this book in different editions from the publisher. So it was sent to me for promo essentially, which is fine. I'll show it to you guys, but I'm not going to be keeping it because I already have a hardback and an arc of this book, and that is Misrule by Heather Walter. And this one is the sequel to Malice and is a sapphic Sleeping Beauty retelling where we are following following a dark grace who is essentially the Maleficent character in this world, and she is the only dark grace. So while there are other graces that specialize in things like beauty and health and bestow their gifts upon people, the dark grace Alice specializes in curses. And one day she meets Aurora, and it kind of like it's a different and alternative perspective on Sleeping Beauty that's also a sapphic romance. From Bloomsbury, thank you very much Bloomsbury, I received Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Crocher. This is not my usual because this is a YA romance, but I think it's the Arthurian legend that hooks me in like it always does. But I do have to say, I haven't read this one yet, but I have yet to read an Arthurian legend retelling that I actually like. This one is more of, like it says in the press release, that it's more inspired than a retelling, but we're following Gwen and Art, who are of course Guinevere and Arthur, and they are betrothed, but they absolutely hate each other. So after they find out, I think Art finds out that Gwen has been writing letters about her handmaid, like romantic diary entries about her handmaid, and Gwen finds Art kissing a boy. They decide to go through with like a betrothal of convenience to appease like their parents while also like exploring their own kind of thing. I think this is just going to be cute and fun. It's given like Casey McQuiston vibes to me, which is why I think I will enjoy this one. And the release date on this one is in May, so it's actually on my April TBR, and I'm hoping to get to it very soon. From Black Crow, I received Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. This one is Olivia's August release, and this is the one that has the amazing like eccentric sounding synopsis on Goodreads. I don't think it is in here, but like the beginning of it is that the main character is a real estate agent and a vampire, and she's trying to sell a haunted house, but the medium that she enlists, who is the godson of death, is actually a fraud. And then aside from that, we also have a demonic personal trainer, a sharp-voiced angel, and a love-stricken reaper to navigate the intricacies of life, death, and everything in between. I have only read The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. There is another Olivia Blake book that's going to be coming in this haul, but I really liked her writing style, and I feel like she has a writing style that will lend itself to all of these different kinds of fantasy books that she's writing. So I'm really excited to get to this one because I think it's going to be like a little bit funny and a little bit like kooky, and that's a vibe that I'm here for. And then from Solaris and also Rebellion Publishing, I received an arc of The Pomegranate Gate by Ariel Kaplan. This one is out in July, so I'm hoping to get to it in June. This is a really nicely bound arc. I do really like it. This one is a little bit different for me because it is a historical fantasy, but the synopsis reminded me a lot of things like the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden and like Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, although I believe that this one is set in like a historical Spain and it has a lot of Jewish folklore in it. So I guess moving on to the books that were gifted to me, I did receive one book for Christmas from Ashley, which is the illustrated edition of The Witcher, or like the Last Wish, the first book in the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski, which I have actually read this one in the paperback copy. And let me tell you, Ashley has broken me with this one because I saw these and I thought they were beautiful, but I already have the paperbacks, so I wasn't gonna do it. And now she started it off, like I feel like I'm gonna have to commit and get the entire series because these are so beautiful. And then the illustrations, while I will say they are few and far between, I really like the color schemes of them because they match the covers of the books. Like they're picked out in red, or like I think the sequel Sword of Destiny's blue, so all of the illustrations are picked out in blue. So if you guys are unfamiliar with The Witcher, we are following Geralt of Rivia, who is a witcher, which is a monster hunter. I think they're kind of dying out. There's not many of them left, and they're also created, I think, by some kind of like mutation. But this one is heavily inspired by, I'm pretty sure it's Polish folklore, so you have a lot of elements and creatures from Polish folklore throughout the series. And the first two books are a series of short stories, which is what's put me off because like I don't like short stories. So I read the first one, it was fine. I do want to continue, but it's just getting over the hump of like short stories that's making me really struggle. And thank you very much to Ashley for this. For Valentine's Day, I received a subscription box special edition from Curtis, but he did get it off eBay, and that is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. There are a few Ali Hazelwood books in this video. We've already had one, this one's the second, but in January I read The Love Hypothesis and I became obsessed, which is why there is so much Ali Hazelwood now in this haul. So The Love Hypothesis, once again, a standalone STEM romance. In this one we are following Olive, and she is a PhD candidate, I'm pretty sure, and her best friend has some chemistry with this guy that Olive was dating. And because of girl code, her friend doesn't really want to get involved with this guy, but Olive literally has no feelings about him and doesn't care. So she pretends that she's on a date so her friend will go ahead and go out with this guy. However, she's actually just in the lab working on her project, and she sees her best friend who's not supposed to be there, so she grabs the closest guy to her and kisses him, who turns out to be this professor that everybody hates. So then she kind of has to commit to pretending to date him to put her friend at ease so that she will like follow this relationship with this guy, because they do actually have quite a lot of chemistry. All of Ali Hazelwood's female main characters are on the ace arrow spectrum. I believe that they're all demi, but it's never like fully laid out on the page, like it never puts a label on anything, but that's how I interpret it. And they all kind of follow the same character archetype, so if you like one, you will very much like all of them. Luckily it worked for me. I love The Love Hypothesis, and I love the other two books from Ali Hazelwood as well. And then the rest are of course from Ash, because who else would they be from? Thank you very much, Ash. But the first one was A Tangled in Tinsel. Tangled in Tinsel by Trulina Pucci, which I hope it's, I really hope that it's not what I think it wants to be here. We're going with Pucci, but this one is a little Christmas reverse harem novella, which I very much enjoyed. We're following a girl who she's an interior designer, and she is working on this cabin for this group of rich guys when a snowstorm like rolls in, and she ends up snowed in with them for like a 5-day period. I did really enjoy this one. I prefer smut like this to be a short novella. Any longer than that and it kind of gets on my nerves, but I didn't like the ending and the way that it wrapped up. Ash also sent me Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark, which I also very much enjoyed. This one is a mafia romance following, is she Ada? Yeah, it's between the conflict in here is between the Italian and the Irish mafia families. The daughter of the Italian family accidentally steals a watch from the son of the eldest son of the Irish family, and so he's hunting her down and he ends up injuring her brother. So these two families are gearing up to go to war, but then the patriarchs come together and they've decided that they've lost enough people, like enough family members in this endless feud between these two families. So they actually propose a pact, a marriage pact instead, and these two characters have to get married. So it is a hate to love. It's also a forced marriage situation. I thought that this book was so addictive. In terms of the romance, I wasn't especially into it, as I like to be in a romance, but in terms of it being a compelling, absorbing read, loved it. And then the last one that Ash kindly sent to me is A Touch of Ruin by Scarlett St. Clair. This one is book 2 in the Hades and Persephone series, which I read book 1 right at the end of last month, and I ended up really enjoying it. I wouldn't say it's very good, but I really enjoyed it. So Ash very kindly sent me the sequel. But there is another book in this haul that's connected to this, because the reading order isn't actually just to read through the entire series, because of course it's not, that would be too easy. But this one is an urban fantasy series following Persephone, who is very new to the city of New Athens. She's actually starting an internship at a news company, and her friend gets a invitation to Hades' very exclusive invitation only club. So Persephone goes along with her, and this guy ends up teaching her to play poker, and because she's learning, she obviously loses a couple of times, only to find out that the guy that she's been playing against is Hades, and he ties her into a bargain where she has to create life in the underworld, otherwise she has to live with him down there forever. However, even though Persephone is the goddess of spring, her powers haven't manifested the way that everybody expected them to, and everything that she touches withers and dies. I guess now it would make most sense to go for the books that I bought new, because the first one of those is A Game of Fate by Scarlett St. Clair. This is the first book in the Hades saga, which is from Hades' perspective. I have heard there is a bit of a high fantasy plotline in here that's more substantial than the one in the Hades and Persephone series, but the reading order for this series, I believe, is to dip between the Persephone and the Hades books. So I picked this one up because this is the next one that I'm gonna have to read to continue the series. In January, I went to London and I picked up 3 books from, if you are in London or visit London at all and you're a fantasy reader, would highly recommend going to Forbidden Planet, because the entire downstairs of their store, they have like comics and manga, but they also have an extensive fantasy bookshop down there, and it's actually my favorite fantasy bookshop. And they also have a very extensive damages section, so I picked up 2 books in the damages and 1 on the sale. But the first damaged copy was Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson. This is one of the novellas in the Stormlight series. I have already read it. I have an ebook of this. I wasn't too bothered about having a physical copy, but as it was just 99 pence because of the tear on the dust jacket, I decided to go for it. The other one that I picked up damaged is actually my current read, and there is barely anything wrong with this, and that is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. So this was 99 pence reduced from 9.99, and the only damage that I can find on this, so ignore this crinkling here because I've done this, is you can barely see it. There's a line here scored in the pages. That is all. So this one is an adult fantasy, which I suspect has a little bit of a sci-fi element to it, but we are following a girl who has been raised to sacrifice herself to the god of the unspoken name, or like the unspoken name god. But on the day that she's going to do this, she's approached by a wizard who invites her to join him to become his thief and assassin and help him to topple an empire. So she takes him up on his offer. I'm really enjoying this. If you're a fan actually of the Chorus of Dragons series by Jen Lyons, I think you'll really enjoy this one based on the writing style, but I think there's going to be quite a bit of betrayal in here, so I'm excited for that to start to unfold. And then the last book that I picked up from Forbidden Planet was from the sale, and that is Song of the Forever Rains by E.J. Mello. This one is a fantasy romance, and the author is going to be at Rare in London, which I'm attending a little bit later this year, so I took this opportunity to pick up a reduced finished copy. But this one is about the 3 Mousai who are the sorceresses of the Thief Kingdom. This one in particular is following the youngest of the 3, who is sent to stop a duke who is siphoning a toxic drug out of the Thief Kingdom, and along the way I think she starts falling for his heir. If you guys have been here for a while, you will know that there was an elusive Waterstones order that I didn't have all the books from. They were taking forever to come through. I finally got the rest of them, 3 of which were books 3, 4, and 5 in the Savage Land series by Stacey Marie Brown, which I was desperate. Like, this is an addictive series that you could read back to back, and my flow has just completely been ruined by how long it took. 7 months for these to arrive. But the 3rd one is Deadlands, the 4th is Badlands, and the 5th is Bloodlands. And this one is a fantasy romance series that feels very apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic, following a girl who is the ward of the king. Her father was this like legendary general, and from her position of privilege, she likes to give back to the poor by stealing drugs from the trains that move them between the like Fey and human parts of the city, and steal them and put them on the black market so that the profits go to the people who need them as opposed to the elite. And one day when she's doing this, she is found out and thrown into this really like intense prison where she meets this like war hero, more like attack dog called Warwick Farkas, and there's a little bit of a love triangle I guess in this because she's also in love with her best friend who's the prince. When I was in Manchester in January, I went to Travelling Man and I picked up the next 3 installments of Children of the Whales that I need, which is volumes 10, 11, and 12. This is a series that I'm kind of like, it's very much up and down for me, but I feel like I'm halfway through now, so I feel like I have to commit to it. But this one is following a guy who is or a boy who is the archivist on the Mudwhale, which is this island that floats on the sea of sand. Now, these people are very isolated. They've always lived on the Mudwhale, but they have no idea why. And one day when they're scouting out a different island that they pass, they meet a young girl who starts to open up the world for them and makes them realize that there is a reason that they're on this island, and there's a whole wide world out there that they're completely unaware of. The art style in this is why I love it so much, because it is truly one of the most beautiful manga art styles that I have ever encountered. But don't be fooled by how kind of like cutesy these look. They are quite dark, and they do go into like I guess there's like mass murders and torture and stuff in here, and it is like, it's rated for older teen, and it's definitely like a high fantasy series. I pre-ordered Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I still haven't read Ninth House, but I have all of Leigh Bardugo's books in hardback, so I definitely needed to pick this one up. Ninth House is a contemporary fantasy that is set at, is it Harvard or Yale? I always forget. I'm trying to scan this without, because obviously it's the sequel, without getting any spoilers. I think, is it Harvard? It's Harvard or Yale anyway, and she's essentially given a scholarship to this prestigious university, providing that she joins the Ninth House, which is a secret society that has been created to police all of the other secret societies because they're all involved in like occult practices. I also picked up a hardback copy of Beautiful Nightmares by KJ Sutton. I have the rest of this series in the indie paperback and I adore the indie paperbacks, but I did need a hardcover of book 4 in particular because I have been blurbed on the back of this one, so I needed to pick it up just for that purpose alone. I do generally prefer my favorite edition of a book is an indie paperback, but this one is the 4th installment in my favorite fantasy romance series, which is following a young woman called Fortuna who is a nightmare, which means that she can reach into people's minds, find out what their fears are and make them believe that they're experiencing them. And she is now the last of her kind because her brother went missing 2 years prior to the start of this series, and she's pretty much exhausted all of her resources, given up all hope, up until she is approached by a very powerful fairy male who tells her that he knows where her brother is and he will take her directly to him, providing that she marries him. This is the best installment in the series so far in my opinion, but they're all amazing, and y'all know I love Kelsey. I'm gonna meet Kelsey in July. I'm so excited. I also had to pick up, I looked everywhere for this book. I went to multiple Waterstones to pick it up physically, and eventually I had to order it from Amazon. I could have ordered it from Waterstones, but I didn't want anything else and like free shipping, you know. I'm an opportunist. I like to pick things up and purchase them when I see them as opposed to order it online. I don't know whether I'm creating like a fun scavenger hunt for myself or whatever it is, but I needed a copy of Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, and I spent like a good few weeks, like whenever I went anywhere, just popping in bookstores looking for it. Was nowhere to be found. We looked at one shelf of secondhand books in Brighton and it was on it. This isn't that copy, I got this off Amazon, but I am very mad about it. So this is the sequel to The Blade itself. This is the series that Catch Up Book Club are doing this year. So this one is a grimdark fantasy following 3 central characters, one of which is a barbarian from the north, one is a torturer, and one is a fencing champion and like a member of the nobility. The plot is unclear at this point. I feel like the plot of this series is, one, going to be people trying to bring back magic to the world because it's established very on that magic is dying, and 2, there are bubbling wars, one for sure with the north and one also potentially brewing with the south. So I feel like that's the direction that the plot is going in, but we're following these 3 very different perspectives whose paths don't really, like, they cross, but they're from very different positions in this world. And I'm hoping, because what I thought this was going to be is I thought it was going to be an unlikely band of characters coming together like to tackle the plot. It's actually not that, but I feel like, or I hope that that is the direction that this is going in, because this is actually a funny series and it's actually a humor that I appreciate. So I feel like there is a lot of opportunities for comedy if that does actually happen. And then the last 2 books I picked up new were from Waterstone's half price sale that they did at the end of December going into January. One of these I absolutely would not have picked up if it wasn't on that sale, and that one is Glow by Raven Kennedy, which is the 4th book in the Plated Prisoner series. I don't like these hardbacks. If y'all remember, I said my preference is the indie paperback, and this series is no longer available in indie paperback in this country. So I picked up the hardback purely because it was half price so that I can read it. But when I go to the US later this year, I am going to order myself an indie copy to match my actual series. But this series is a King Midas retelling following a girl called Auron who is kept in a cage by Midas. She's also been gold touched by him, but she doesn't mind her captivity because she had a terrible childhood after her parents were murdered growing up on the streets, and she just feels safe and protected being in like Midas's captivity, and she's also in love with him. However, Midas is an ambitious guy and he's not just happy with the territory that he controls. So one day he sets off across the realm to further his position in this world, and he moves all of his prized possessions with him, Auron being one of them, and Auron's life is kind of derailed from there. It's a series that I really enjoy. That's not why I didn't want to buy this book. It's purely because of the edition. And then the final one I got is everyone's favorite cozy fantasy, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This one, literally all I know about it, I picked it up because I actually like cozy fantasy. If we're talking about things like TJ Klune, who deals with some heavier topics sometimes, but I feel like the vibe overall is cozy. And also, like, I liked The Ex Hex by Erin Sterling, which is a romance, but I would consider the setting to be very cozy fantasy. So I feel like I'm going to enjoy this one, but all I know about it is I think it's following an orc who used to be a mercenary who has now set up a coffee shop, and it's potentially sapphic. I only picked up one book secondhand over the last however many months, and that is because, okay, it was 20p on a Tesco table. I couldn't resist it. And that one is The Grey Wolf Throne. I can't say this. The Grey Wolf Throne by Cinder William Chimer, which is the third book in the Seven Realms series. I don't know anything about this series. I haven't started it yet. I have the first book, which I think is called The Demon King, and it's one that I'm very excited to get into, but it was literally like, I don't do this anymore. I don't buy sequels secondhand just because they're cheap if I haven't read any other books in the series, but it was 20 pence. I am who I am, okay? Now moving on to the special editions from subscription box companies. I have 3 from Illumicrate and 2 from Fairy Loot. The first Illumicrate one is our final Ali Hazelwood book of this video, which is Loath to Love You. I actually can't tell you anything about this other than it is a bind up of 3 short stories that I think Ali Hazelwood released last year. I'm expecting them all to be hate to love because that's the dynamic that she tends to go for, but otherwise I really don't know what to expect. I don't like short stories typically. This is purely because I want to read it because it's Ali Hazelwood, but also because it matches all of the Illumicrate editions I have of the rest of her books as well. The other thing I picked up from Illumicrate was the special edition Crescent City set, because of course I did. This is absolutely stunning. We have, oops, patterned sprayed edges on these. There's also exclusive end pages, which are gorgeous. We have foiling under the dust jacket. We have art on the reverse of the dust jacket. They're just all round beautiful. I have ordered the Fairy Loot ones as well that haven't arrived yet because this is my favorite book ever. Right now we pretend this doesn't exist. Well, I just have very mixed feelings about this one, okay? But these also came with some transparent page overlays which look absolutely beautiful, but I have only looked at one so far because I want to wait for my reread to reveal them all and actually put them in the book. If you don't know what this series is, it is an adult urban fantasy romance series following a half-fae woman called Bryce Quinlan, who has been tasked by the Archangel to find a serial killer that they previously thought that they'd captured. And because Bryce has a personal connection to this murderer or this string of murders, she is assigned to find this killer when he starts a new murderous rampage. And because this is a dangerous task, she is assigned a personal bodyguard in the form of Hunt Athalar. Yeah, loved this one. Very dubious about this one, but we'll see how the third book is, which is, I think it's January, the release date on that. From Fairy Loot, I picked up The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake, which is the sequel to The Atlas 6. The Atlas 6 is about 6 people who are incredibly gifted in their respective fields. They have very different powers. Like, I think 2 of them are physicists, one of them's like a master of illusion, one of them can like magically make plants grow, but they are the best of their fields. They are offered a spot in this very exclusive secret society called the Alexandrian Society. However, all 6 of them know going into it that only 5 are actually going to make it through to the society. And the first book follows, I don't know whether it follows the full year, but it follows the period that they have before the decision is made over which 5 are going to continue on into the society. Really liked the Atlas 6. Really excited to get to the Atlas Paradox. Potentially going to read it this month. I haven't decided yet, but this, because it's Fairy Loot, also has gorgeous end pages and foiling and the whole shebang. And then the other book that I got from Fairy Loot is the, sorry if you can hear Brie, she's dreaming, but the final Fairy Loot book that I got is Kingdom of the Feared by Kerry Maniscalco. This one is the final book in the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy. I don't know if that's the title of it, but there is going to be a spin-off series, I know. So this one is following a girl called Amelia whose twin sister is murdered. It's set in Sicily. Her family own a trattoria and they're also witches. So Amelia is like absolutely devastated, as you would be when her twin is murdered. So she starts to investigate to find out like what happened to her, only to find out that she was potentially involved in some dark magic. And in the process of finding out what happened to her sister, she accidentally summons a prince of hell called Wrath. As you can tell, fantasy romance. Really enjoyed book 1, but have yet to continue with this series. If the lighting's changed, it's because a very large truck has just parked up like right outside of my house. Sorry guys. And then the last 4 books that we have are the Book of the Month books. I've worked with Book of the Month twice this year, once in January and I think once in March, and each time I selected 2 books from their monthly selections. So this isn't an ad, this is just me hauling the books I received as part of the promotion. But the first one is Lunar Love by Lauren Kung Jessen. I think that this one is a hate to love romance about a woman who's taking over her family's dating agency and a guy who's in tech, and I think she asked him to make a software to turn her dating agency or her family's dating agency into a dating app, and he gets his wires crossed and thinks that it's something else. Oh, instead of it being about Chinese zodiac, he makes it about animal attraction, and it's just not like on brand with her family's agency, so I think she's out to get him after that. The other one that I got in January is The Reunion by Kayla Olson. This one is another romance about a girl who grew up kind of like on television as the star of a TV show, but after her father died, I think, did her boyfriend cheat on her? Her on-screen love interest and off-screen best friend betrayed her. She left the show and never looked back. However, 20 years later, a streaming service want to host a reunion, so the whole like cast gets back together, and I think she finds herself once again falling for her on-screen love interest. The first one from March is kind of outside of my comfort zone. It's London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. So this one is a historical fantasy, and it's also set predominantly in Victorian London, which historically is a time period that I just really don't get on with. But this one is following a woman who has gone to see a medium in Paris to ask questions about the death of her brother. But when the medium is summoned to London to solve a crime, they find themselves entangled in a crime themselves. This is one that could be very hit or miss for me, but I did definitely want to give it a try. And the other one I picked up is one that I've been eyeing up in Waterstones for a long time, and I took this opportunity to just get it and give it a try, which is Wayward by Amelia Hart. This has a gorgeous UK cover and a gorgeous US cover. It is set in 3 time periods, which are 2019, 1619 and 1942, and the connecting thing between those time periods is a cottage that I think is called Wayward. So in 2019, our main character is fleeing London to the cottage that she's inherited from her great aunt to flee like an abusive partner. In 1619 is a woman who is being trialed for witchcraft after the death of her neighbor, and in 1942 it is a woman who is trapped on her family's crumbling estate because World War II is raging in London. So once again, could be a hit, could be a miss, but I wanted to give it a try. So those are all of the books that I've hauled in the first part of the year. I wanted to say it's not that bad, considering we've taken out all of my monthly subscription boxes out of this and the books to door video that I did, which was like 17 paperbacks. It's still a considerable amount that I've hauled. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, with me being here and doing this, I'm always gonna haul a lot of books, I feel. So I'm deciding to just roll with it and accept it. But down in my comments, please let me know which of these books I haven't read yet that you are most excited to see my thoughts on, and also let me know if you've read any of these, especially the ones that I'm a little bit less sure about, and let me know your thoughts on those. But aside from that, guys, I do hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish Candle website, the Etsy for that, and a 10% off discount code. That's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.